right now, we're in a world of a lot of volatility and change. And essentially, alignment is a true sign of resilience where there's a strong core. And any organization that can really focus on strengthening their core and being aware when things are not in alignment is one of the best places to go. Because if we can bring those back into alignment, then we're going to have resiliency, and resiliency will help us weather any storm.
Welcome to the Great Talent, Great Business Podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit greattalentpodcast.com. where you can download this episode's free worksheet designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm here with Adrienne Duffy, co-founder and partner at Big Futures, Inc. Adrienne is a leadership coach and consultant who has spent decades helping entrepreneurs and teams achieve bold goals. She's created the Nexus Project, a framework that aligns individuals and organizations around inner and outer growth to drive sustainable results. She is a coach with the Strategic Coach program. And by the way, spoiler alert, she is my coach at Strategic Coach and helps leaders build teams around what people do best. Adrienne, great to see you and welcome to the show. Let's dive right in.
So great to be here.
Let's get started. So, Adrienne, I mentioned in your bio the Nexus Project. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it came to life?
Essentially, the Nexus Project is a framework or a platform that supports mid-sized organizations to achieve sustainable results. And what we've learned over the many years that we've been in business is that sustainable growth requires alignment between two very important factors, and that is inner growth and outer growth. In the earlier days of our business, when we were supporting organizations to grow and scale, we launched something called the Moon Project. That was 20 years ago. So we were kind of pioneers in that moonshot concept. And one of the things that we learned is we were getting these organizations to really project out their moonshot goals, to achieve them, is that if they weren't focusing on inner growth at the same time that they were focusing on outer growth, that there were often issues and problems that arose. And so the Nexus Project was the next era to really address that whole issue around culture and aspiration, around mindset and best practices within a person, as well as how they show up on a day-to-day basis in achieving their goals.
Can you tell us a little bit more about inner and outer growth?
Yeah, inner growth and outer growth would have two factors in a small to medium-sized business. On an individual team level, leadership first, that would be understanding the vision and what's important and aligning on that first. Being able to cast that to the team, that's really important for people to connect to inspiration on the inside as they're evolving whatever they're responsible for or whatever they're actually striving to achieve. Outer growth is more the goals, the KPIs, the different things that we're putting into place, the systems and the structures. Those are outside. And sustainable growth, what we learned, required both. And organizations that were willing to put as much effort into the inner growth of their team and the culture actually had sustainable growth once they got to the moon and we were on to Mars.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if I've ever heard somebody talk about inner and outer growth and what I would say is like the intrinsic reasons people do things and then maybe the way that we measure them. That's a really powerful topic. You also mentioned the word alignment. And I don't think people really understand what that is and how without alignment, it's just like pushing a boulder uphill. So where does alignment start?
Well, essentially, alignment is going to start with knowing where we have to go and what we have to align to. And that's essential for any business leader or business owner is to get immense clarity on what it is and where we're going and the purpose behind it. When we launched Moon Projects, and I still use this model to the day, Rob, we created a triangle model that was vision, strategy, and accountability. Accountability stood at the top of the triangle. And in the middle, and this is something we learned in the early days, we put powered by inspiration. Inspiration comes from the inside out. Motivation's kind of more from the outside in. So if we can have inspiration and an inspirational leader, that's going to be the first step in aligning people around where we're going and really going after those 10x multiplier goals that are so popularized in today's business. So alignment really starts there. And then there are like myriad of different factors that really spin off of that. But I'd say, Rob, that right now we're in a world of a lot of volatility and change. And essentially, alignment is a true sign of resilience where there's a strong core. And any organization that can really focus on strengthening their core and being aware when things are not in alignment is one of the best places to go. Because if we can bring those back into alignment, then we're going to have resiliency, and resiliency will help us weather any storm.
Another really powerful thing. I'm curious, with all the work that you've done over the several decades, how often do you see a business owner that doesn't even him or herself know where they're going? Because without that, there's nothing to articulate.
Well,
other than confusion.
More often than you would believe, Rob.
No, actually, I believe it.
Yeah. And fortunately, in the last decade, there's been some wonderful, wonderful frameworks that help small to mid-sized businesses get that together. I know EOS is one of them. You ascribe to that, scaling up. Other frameworks like that really help a business owner get clear on these alignment factors, and they're fabulous. I call them like the skeletal structure of the organization strategically. And if we can put those kinds of things into place, it's important. But you know what? There's a little bit of soul searching involved that is transcendent of a system. You know, for a business owner to go to their heart and really go, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because if we want sustainable growth and we aren't clear about why we're doing what we're doing, it ain't happening. Sorry. When the work gets tough, when we're in the messy middle of a project or the launch of any important value that we're bringing out to market, that's when we have to always remember why we're doing what we're doing. And if we can have a business leader or business owner that is really clear about that, that is one of the quickest ways that I've found to align a team again, is just to bring it back to why we're doing what we're doing and reminding everybody. So doing that work is important.
The old Simon Sinek thing, starting with why, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah,
we talk about our mission all the time at our meetings and we celebrate it. So I get it. And quite frankly, I think back to previous ventures and I didn't do that. And we were just working. Now we got things done.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, when it got tough, it was a lot tougher without that.
Yeah.
And not only that, actually, you know what? That's going to lead into my next question. You mentioned 10X, and for me, that's a reference to Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy's book, 10X is Easier Than 2X, which if you haven't read it, please read it. Why is it so important for alignment with what the company's goals are, what the team's goals are, with each person's unique abilities and strengths, and unique ability being something that I know I first heard from Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach. Maybe you can start out with what unique ability is and then talk about that alignment and why that's so important.
Yeah, I think any business is in business to multiply. That's why we're in business. So that's a given. And in order to really multiply in a big way and to scale in the way that maybe a business owner dreams about, we actually need a high performance team. And in order to have a high performance team, you need to have alignment between the unique capabilities. We call it in the strategic coach ecosystem, unique ability, but there's many other ways to look at it. It's unique capabilities, gifts, talents, those different kinds of things that are central to that team member. And when we can actually align those things, those gifts and abilities to a role that you're playing in an organization to help achieve goals and create value for our target audiences or our hero target, however we're bringing our value out into the world, then that's a really important element, because what'll happen is that performance can get better when that alignment happens. And it's very difficult for performance to get better when that alignment isn't happening. I mean, if we could get 80% alignment between a person's abilities, their competencies, what they love doing, they're passionate about, and what the organization needs, that's like a 10 plus, because that's where high performance teams really germinate from, that seed of connection between the role and the gifts of the person that's playing that role in any kind of organization. And one thing that I often think about with this one, Rob, is that it's often lost in this conversation, is that when we're in that zone, there's no upward limit to how great we could be. Like, we're just going to get better and better and better and better. I don't know if there's any sports that you like, but right now it's hockey playoff season, and I'm a hockey fan. And one of the things that's really extraordinary to me in watching any team go through a season and then enter the playoffs, they all have to be like at the top of their game. They're at their unique ability. But what's extraordinary to me is they get better. How can that be? Like, they're already at the top of the game. They're the best of the best, and yet they're getting better. If we can apply that thinking in our businesses, then we're actually going to be able to create an aligned structure that's going to be able to create massive value out in the world. And that's the key to success.
I'm a big New York Ranger fan, and it was really painful because I saw that lack of alignment in the middle of the season. And right then and there, I said, season's over.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about the word alignment back then, but I knew without that, even if they made the playoffs, we're not going anywhere. So yeah, it was painful to watch.
Well, it's interesting too that you can have alignment with individuals in their roles, but we also have to align between each other on teams. And I think that that's a really important part of what we're talking about here, because you can have these superstars, but it's not about the ego. It's not about the superstar. We want them there, but we also want high performance teamwork.
This episode is brought to you by Work Better Now, your trusted partner for accessing high-performing talent from Latin America. Our clients say that partnering with Work Better Now has transformed their businesses by providing the proactive, reliable, and skilled professionals they need to thrive. For more resources to help your business grow, visit workbetternow.com/eguide. And if you're ready to build your dream team, head to workbetternow.com to schedule your consultation today. As a special thank you to Great Talent, Great Business listeners, we're offering $150 off your first 3 months. Just mention Great Talent during your consult.
I want to just recap what we've talked about so far because it's so amazingly powerful. Number one, as the business leader, maybe it's the owner, you need to know where you're going. You need to be able to articulate that. And then what you just shared with us is if you can align the team and then the individual with their unique abilities, those things that they do exceptionally well, that drive a lot of value, and their role, and then align that with where the company's going, you are off to the races. There is nothing you can't accomplish. Think about how powerful it is. By the way, just for everybody watching, this is not just for the Ubers and the Teslas of the world. This is for all of us.
Oh, yeah.
This is our jobs as business owners. If we do this, everything else gets a lot easier. So to that end, how does a business leader go about helping their team members and you as the business leader understand what every member's unique ability is and then make sure that they're in those right roles? Where do you start there?
That's a great question. And I like to use kind of the framework, and we've talked about this before. If our listeners could just visualize an iceberg, and there's a water line, but there's this large mass of ice below the water line, and then there's a water line, and then the smaller piece of ice is above. If we just are thinking about that, and we're trying to align performance, if we think about the larger piece of ice being why a person is motivated to do what they do or inspired to do what they do, that's an important nut to crack. It is the hardest. Fortunately, I found a tool called the Print, which basically looks at a person's motivational imprint, their unconscious motivation, the why of them. And that was a massive breakthrough once I found that tool, because there's so many tools that deal with the waterline and above. Almost all the other ones that I know of do that. But how do we get into the deeper part? And that goes back to where we started here, inner and outer growth. So this is a great tool. And what I'm leading to here, Rob, is that we can accelerate this process by having really good tools at our fingertips that help to align a person's performance with whatever the roles are. At the waterline, and we've used this one for years, Colby is one of the best. It's how we're going to show up, how we're going to strive once we're in a role. And that's an important element. And then we get into the above the surface, and there's just so many, it's unbelievable. But anything from a Myers-Briggs to a Clifton Strengths or any of those things. But the beauty of these, if we curate them carefully as a business owner, that we can actually use these not only to accelerate the role alignment that we've been talking about, but we can also use it to accelerate team dynamic. I call it, how can we make sure that we have conflict prevention as well as tools that we can use when the work gets tough, to be able to get the team to align, to work well together, to understand their strengths, their superpowers. I do a lot around what is each team member's superpower? Let's look at these things and let's celebrate everyone. And the beauty of this also is that often you have two people that are quite opposite. But once they understand it through the lens of a superpower, they start to appreciate the need of the two. The two together is exponentially more than any one of them individually. If we can just get over the opposite.
Right.
We got to have
Right.
emotional intelligence to do that one.
Complementary strengths. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering if we skip something here, Adrienne. So we talked about how we got to look at our team and help them. We need to understand and help them understand what their strengths are. Print for below the iceberg, something like Colby for above the iceberg, how they show up. Do we need to then, before we even do that, or at the same time, do we need to look at every role that we have throughout the company? And how do we figure out what that role demands in terms of somebody's Print or Colby score?
Well, I think at the very basic, Rob, we have to have a role, some kind of identity of what the role is that we need to have played. And then we can start to layer in some of these various different ways of looking at that person. On the print report itself, there's something called the role alignment report, which is a really direct way to look at if that motivation is going to be aligned with the role that person is going to play. But then there's the outer part, which is what are the competencies, the capabilities, the core abilities that we need someone to be able to play, their experience, their background. So it's very multifaceted, but the more energy that goes into the selection process, the better it's going to be in terms of getting the right person in there. And then hopefully, if all goes well, I call it the test drive. After we do a test drive, then we can find out if that's going to fly. But here's the other issue that comes back, and I've had a lot of experience with this one. When you're helping a mid-sized business grow and scale, there's going to be thresholds where the people that took you from A to B are not necessarily the same people that can take you from B to C. Sometimes they are, but not always, or B to C, C to D, and so on. And so that's where we have to be really cognizant of the fact that we need to continually refresh, develop the team, and have important conversations, which is also why having a strategic structure in place helps to have those conversations.
So then, if I understand correctly, as you're growing, the person may or may not change. I'm guessing their Colby and Print is not changing much over time, but the role is changing. So is this something that companies should do, like reevaluate the role and what's over the next year, I guess, what's coming, what does this role need to do that may change from year to year? Is that what you're saying? And then reevaluate the person in that role.
Yeah, looking at the long-term goals, looking at the yearly goals, and then just going, what are the capabilities, the talent that we need to have to fulfill these particular goals? And do we have the right people? And really being honest about evaluating that. It's very common that a company will promote someone into their incompetence. Or if they're already in their unique ability, it could be like our previous discussion, that they just elevate and elevate and elevate. But you and I both know commonly a really great team member will be promoted into management, and that is not their unique ability. And we wonder why we're having the frustration.
Not to mention, we haven't trained them on the skills
Yeah,
to be able to.
exactly. Exactly.
Right. They'll figure it out. They got us to this point, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
which it doesn't work that way.
Well,
Adrienne, you've worked with so many entrepreneurs over the years. What are some signs that a team is out of alignment? And then what are the first few things they need to do to correct that?
essentially, if we are in a situation where I call it the messy middle of a project or something like that, and things are going awry, that's a sign that things are out of alignment. My advice in that one is that we get really clear about reminding everybody, again, why we're doing what we're doing. If we're seeing a little infighting between two organizational functions, let's say the admin side of the business with the sales side of the business, there's often a little bit of drama that can happen in that part of a business. Then what we talked about previously, where we do some team building and we really start to celebrate the beautiful qualities of each superpower and appreciating those, and just let's remember that. Another sign can be that there's, let's say, energy. We just don't seem to have the energy. That's kind of a gut feel, but where's the energy? In that kind of situation, it's often really important to celebrate progress. Because when we're really striving, a small business, we're trying to get to the next level, we're getting to medium, we just keep going. It's really easy to keep driving for those audacious goals and not celebrating the progress along the way. So those are a few things that I think can really help.
Very helpful. So we covered a lot of ground here, Adrienne. Business owners watching, listening, what's one, maybe two steps that business owners can take to move to a more aligned and empowered team and get to that Shangri-La that we're all searching for?
A few years ago, and I mean, this was kind of during the COVID era. Do you remember what was called the Grand Resignation?
Right.
People were kind of going, why am I doing this? And do I still want to be doing this? But I had some colleagues that were in the HR field who were doing a lot of exit interviews. And one of the things that I learned during that phase, and I think that it might be useful in terms of kind of a little bit of a silver bullet for alignment, is that there were some key factors or patterns that emerged. One of them was commonly the team member just didn't have a clue where we're going. So we already talked about that pretty substantially. Like, you got to have the vision. But the second one was they didn't understand their plan and path to get there. So they may be aligned in their role, but they didn't understand, how do I get there? And a lot of our younger staff, they grew up with rubrics. They grew up with having success criteria. So have those been clearly defined? The third real pattern was they didn't feel like they had a relationship with anyone as superior to them in the organization. So let's look at that one. How is the relationship going? And then it was kind of like, oh, okay, now we're looking at not having the energy, the competencies, and other things like that. But those were really key factors. And so I'm always recommending that business leaders go back to themselves first and just assess those things. Have I created a safe environment? How is the culture? Have those things been communicated? And if yes, then we can go on to, okay, number one, if we're going to go 10x, we have to do 10y. So what is that inspirational purpose? And in every moon project, every moonshot launch I've ever done, when we launch that big vision, there's always a single question, and I think it's an important one for all our listeners to really take to heart. The question that I ask is this: what inspires you about this vision and your role in it? And it's just magic. I recommend any of our listeners at your next team meeting or your retreat, when you're casting the vision and you're talking about, ask that question and go around the table to all the team members. And it's one of the most aligning things that I've ever seen, and it works every time.
And it's so simple.
It's so simple.
And by the way, you as the business owner, attention business owners, you as the business owner, you're going to answer that question for yourself. You don't have to answer that for everybody. Let them answer it. Watch the magic happen.
Oh, absolutely. And it is magic. Trust me. It's beautiful to watch.
Adrienne, this has been amazing. I feel like if business owners just watch this, they can course correct and be on their way to an amazing 2025. Where can people find out more about you and Big Futures?
My company, Big Futures Inc., it's in Canada. So bigfuturesinc.ca is the best way. And if anyone wants to email me, I'm happy to correspond. It's adrienne@bigfuturesinc.ca.
Perfect. Adrienne, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll be seeing you very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening. The Great Talent, Great Business podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the worksheet for this episode at the link below.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Great Talent, Great Business, or visit greattalentpodcast.com.